Chapter 23. I don't know when the rain gradually subsided. I still kept my original posture and sat on the ground. The wind was so strong, the wet hair was dripping with water, the broken clothes were stuck to my body, and there was only the sound of the wind whistling, so quiet. Under the reflection of the advertising light boxes on the shore and the lights of the buildings, the sky glowed a strange and coquettish blue-purple color. You could see that there were many clouds rolling, and the edges of the clouds were torn by the typhoon like smoke. It's so beautiful. I sighed and tried to stop my trembling, but it was too cold, and I kept making a gig between my lips and teeth. I tried my best to stand up and took 2 steps. The right ankle was swollen and shiny like a steamed bun. Although it was painful, it should be fine to move slowly. I look at myself. I look miserable like a refugee who has fled, but I can't hide on the roof of this building forever. Although it's embarrassing, I have to go home. The elevator probably stopped a long time ago. Thinking of this, my mouth felt bitter as if I had Huang Lian, so I had to stiff my scalp slowly go to the door. Chase doesn't bring it with him? He left too hastily and left the camera bag. Now this bag is in my hand. It is probably full of camera lenses and film, and it weighs more than 1,000 pounds. Fortunately, this bag is waterproof. Otherwise, in such a heavy rain, the labor of our whole group and the expensive photographic equipment of Chase would have been completely reimbursed today. When I was still a few meters away from the door, the iron door was suddenly slammed open. I subconsciously clenched my fist and retreated. I could clearly see that the figure who broke in was actually Min. He stood there fiercely. Breathing heavily, he stared at me with an unbelievable complexion on his face. I remembered my embarrassment, put down my camera bag and shyly stretched out my hand to cover my chest. Min leaned forward and stood in front of me. He lowered his head and looked at it carefully. His thick eyebrows were gradually locked, and his eyes showed distress and anger. I opened my mouth to speak, only to find that the shrill scream had made my throat hoarse, and I couldn't make any sound. Min suddenly opened his arms and took me into his arms, and said softly and painfully, "It doesn't matter. Xiaobai, don't be afraid, as long as you are safe and sound. It doesn't matter." What a warm embrace. The cold skin all over my body was longing for such a powerful and secure warm embrace. I slowly relaxed, and hesitantly reached out to hug Min's shoulders. My fingertips clearly felt it. The curves of the muscles under the thin shirt were gradually tightening. I have always known Min's hidden admiration. Beneath his free and easy appearance is a soft and delicate heart. Out of love and pride, Min chose respect and restraint until I showed any response. I am very grateful for this. I can't deny my affection for Min, but I just can't accept other men except Su. I laughed sadly and contemptuously at my own cowardice and evasion, but it was really hard for me to drop everything right away and take this step. Of course, I can accept Min's love first, but it would be too unfair for him if I do so. How can I kiss a man while thinking about another man? No way. Absolutely not. So we all took a cautious avoidance and kept each other within the safest range of good friend. No one knew about such a delicate mood except me and Min. Min's arms were so hard, it seemed like he would rub my whole body into his body. I couldn't help but think of the hug I had with Su after we reunited under the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Just like now, Su hugged me so deeply and anxiously, and the joy of being lost and regained almost flooded over my body and mind. I thought sadly, that kind of care still refuses to love me. Su, you have given me such beautiful memories, but you have also left me with the deepest wounds. Never fade away and I lose the ability to love. The body temperature gradually warmed up, and the wound on my body became more and more painful. I couldn't help but move. Min let go of me gently, carefully examined the wound on my forehead, frowned and said, "The wound is a little deep, I'm afraid we have to go to the hospital. Xiaobai, shall we go to the hospital?" I nodded honestly. He slowly broke my persistently hand that holding my shirt. The torn shirt fell apart, and I turned my face in embarrassment. The original white and neat shirt had been torn apart, and it was still stained with blood and mud, soaked with rain and mixed with ugly patterns. Min gently took off the shirt for me. I shrank, but I didn't resist. My body was covered with bruises and scratches, my wrists seemed to be swollen and crisscrossed with cyan finger marks. In addition, the open wound on my forehead, the side of the cheek was also bruised. The lower lip was a deep tooth mark from my own bite, and blood oozed out. Min's fingers brushed the wound lightly like feathers. He held my face and turned slowly. I reluctantly looked him in the eyes, trying to make a low voice. Don't blame Chase. He doesn't know what he is doing. Nothing. Shh. It doesn't matter, I don't care. As long as you are safe. Min stretched out a finger and pressed it on my mouth. He forced a reassuring smile. Min took off his shirt to help me put it on, buttoned it carefully, and carefully rolled up the two sleeves that were too long. Is it okay? He looked at me inquiringly. I nodded. He picked up the bag on the ground, and helped me leave the roof. The elevator had stopped long ago, and just now, Min ran up the stairs all the way the 42-story building, just climbed up in one breath. It turns out that when Jiayun called me, Min was already back, but I didn't answer 3 calls in a row, and then she couldn't get through at all. Jiayun felt a little strange, but she didn't care much. Later, Oh Young and Mai arrived at the bar late, but Chase and I still didn't show up. Everyone thought it was a little strange, because I had never missed an appointment before, and if something was delayed, I would call to notify them. After waiting for another hour, it was nearly 10 o'clock in the evening. No one answered the phone call at home, and the mobile phone couldn't get through. They asked my colleague from Chase's studio and said that he hadn't come back. Everyone started to panic. They asked Jiayun, where did I say beforehand? Jiayun only remembers the roof of the new building near the pier, but can't remember the name. So Oh Young and Min discussed it and decided to find me separately. Oh Young and Mai went to my house, and Min drove to the buildings near the pier to ask. When he got to the Pearl Tower, when Min got off the car, he saw a few pieces of wreckage of a mobile phone on the ground. It was the phone panel I was using. He rushed in and the service desk was empty. A photography team was shooting on the roof in the afternoon, and it should have ended in the evening. The details are not clear. It seems that no one went up to check after the incident. At this time, the elevator on the top floor had stopped. Min didn't expect to take another elevator and then change the stairs. He rushed into the fire escape and climbed the stairs all the way up, and sure enough, he found me on the roof. We went down the stairs slowly, and we didn't get to the 20th floor before we could take the elevator to the end. The light in the fire escape is not very dark. The pale white light reflects that I look more and more blue and gray. There is a slight continuous electric current sound in the air, and the low-frequency sound is very disturbing. Min talked to me all the way to distract me from the pain, stopped every 2 floors, and finally got down on the 15th or 16th floor. My ankle was so swollen that it almost blocked the mouth of my sneaker. Every step I stepped on was painful like 1,000 needles. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I broke free from Min's hand and slid down the wall and sat on the steps. Where does it hurt? Do you feel uncomfortable? Min knelt down on one knee and looked at me anxiously. Seeing that he seemed to treat me as a porcelain doll, I was moved and amused. I couldn't help opening my mouth, but it affected the wound on my lips, and I gasped in pain. Min calmed down. He stared at me silently. There seemed to be 1,000 words in his eyes, but he didn't know where to start. At this moment, compared with the usual cheerful and sassy, Min seems to have precipitated the other side of his temperament, quiet and meticulous. He gently combed my messy short hair with his fingers, and brushed away a few locks of hair that covered the wound on the forehead. I didn't move or make a sound. Almost naturally, Min raised my face, and we looked at each other quietly. Except for the buzzing electric current in the fire escape, it was the gentle undulating breathing of Min and I. After a while, I found my heart beating faster and my face started to get hot. I was slightly surprised. Why did I have such a reaction? I thought I would only feel nervous and attached when I thought of or saw Sue. Why does my heart flutter in the face of other men's affectionate gaze? As a kind of shock that I betrayed myself, I lowered my eyes and turned to look elsewhere. As I stood up angrily, I supported the wall and gritted my teeth and walked down by myself. Min didn't catch up this time. He followed me silently, always keeping a distance of 2 steps from me. He didn't make a sound until he went down to the 20th floor. Finally, I no longer have to endure the impact force that bounces back every time I go down the stairs. My injured right foot has lost consciousness, so I can only lift and lower it mechanically with the straightening of the leg joints. When I saw the fire door exit on the 20th floor, I breathed a sigh of relief and looked back at Min. He gave me his shirt. So he was naked with a pair of straight jeans underneath. I noticed that Min's body is vigorous and beautiful, with smooth skin texture and handsome facial features. Even in the dim light, it shines like the intimidating spirit of the world, just like the son of the gods who descended to the world in ancient Greek legends. I came out of the elevator. Under the stunned gaze of the night security guard in the lobby, the embarrassed me and the disheveled Min politely nodded to him and left. We went to the hospital first. On the way, Min called Jiayan and Oh-young, respectively. He simply explained that he had found me and had something trivial to deal with. Let everyone go home to rest and contact me for another day. Along the way, Min kept silent, occasionally turning his head to look at me and giving me a gentle smile. The hospital outpatient was on duty by a middle-aged female doctor. She acted very vigorously. When she saw my appearance, she was shocked and then smiled sympathetically and comforted. At the same time, she stared at Min, who supported me fiercely. She obviously misunderstood. Min did not argue, but only obeyed the instructions to register for medicine. The female doctor took me into the isolation room with the curtain drawn, and asked me to take off my clothes and treat my wounds carefully. Fortunately, the open wound on the forehead is not large, but it is relatively deep, so in the end, 2 stitches were stitched and gauze was pasted. My body was treated with antiseptic lotion and ointment one by one. The doctor looked at my bruised, swollen wrists, and my swollen ankles, then shook her head. In the end, she couldn't help but ask me if I wanted to call the police. I thanked her for her kindness and refused. When I came out of the isolation room, my right foot was no longer able to put on my shoes, and I was covered with a thick gauze like a zongzi. The female doctor asked me to take a X-ray the next day, to see if there any fracture. Min was already waiting outside at this time. He stared at me anxiously with a chagrin look. I know he was annoyed that he didn't notice my foot injury just now, otherwise he would have carried me all the way from the top of the Pearl Tower to the hospital. I comforted Min with a relaxed smile. It doesn't matter. My bones are strong. Without waiting for Min to speak, the female doctor finally couldn't help scolding Min. If you're worried, then why are you being so violent at the first place? Take good care of your lover in the future. Yes, yes. Min stopped me, who wanted to explain, and nodded in agreement. I had no choice but to smile. Going back to the old apartment where we lived, Min turned off the engine and signaled me not to move, then got out of the car first. He came to the other side of the car, opened the door, carefully helped me out of the car, and carried me in his arms. His movements were so decisive and beyond doubt. I immediately remembered the rainy night we first met. He did the same thing. So he picked me up decisively and intervened in my life from then on. Looking at Min's gentle and firm eyes, I smiled gratefully and stopped struggling or opposed. It was midnight, and the old-fashioned fence elevator was locked again. Min carried me directly to the 3rd floor until I entered the house. He took me directly into the bathroom and let me sit on the edge of the bathtub, then wiped my face and hair with a damp towel. Hesitating for a while, he wet a few large towels and put them on my hand. He took out the clean bathrobe from the cupboard above the table and put it on the rattan basket next to me, and then squatted softly and said, "Shall you wipe your body and change your clothes first? Be careful not to get wet. I'm just outside. If you need anything, just call me." My face turned red again, and I nodded shyly. I cleaned myself carelessly. I changed my clothes and went out. Min leaned against the wall at the bathroom door waiting for me. Not allowing me to object, he picked me up again and walked into the bedroom, carefully placing me on the bed and covering with blanket. After checking the doors and windows, Min went and brought a glass of water and put it on the low bedside table. I didn't speak, just quietly watched him go in and out. At this moment, Min slowly leaned down and gently rubbed my forehead against the gauze with his fingers. He seemed to want to kiss me, but he hesitated for a while, and finally just touched my temple with his lips and left quickly. He gave me one last deep look, smiled brightly, and then turned off the lights and left. In the dark, I heard Min's footsteps staying at the door of the bedroom for a long time before quietly leaving. There was a slight sound of closing the door, and the surroundings became quiet. Today is really a violent day, just like the weather tonight. It brought Chase the trauma that ripped apart the body and mind like a typhoon, and brought me the shock and damage that came like a torrential rain and couldn't be avoided. At this moment, recalling Chase's wild and rude hug, I still remember the fragmented feelings and the panic. How scared and helpless I was at that time, but even then I couldn't deny that it was a scorching embrace, which seemed to be burning hot from the surface of the skin directly to the heart in an instant. It turns out that I haven't been able to get rid of the chill that lingered in my body that night when I was 18 years old. My heart is so afraid of the cold. I long for a warm hug like this. I suddenly had a terrible idea, and I began to doubt myself and my unforgettable fascination with Sue for so many years. Don't I really love Sue? In my emotional journey of poverty, it was Sue who gave me the hug I needed most in my saddest and coldest time. He is just the wrong person who appeared at the right time. From then on, I fell in love with the feeling when Sue hugged me, so I made a wrong judgment and placed all my feelings of youth and ignorance full of naivety. In fact, what I crave may just be a warm embrace. That thought scares me more than Chase is irrational. I buried my head deep in the pillow, trembling all over. In the endless darkness, I heard the roar of the wind outside the window, and for the first time in so many years, I really shed tears. The hot, burning tears, every drop seems to be corroding my heart and soul, almost screaming in pain. I have never been so disappointed. I feel deeply disappointed in my lost, obscure and lonely young years. How ridiculous. I thought I had at least good memories, and it all seemed like the most ridiculous misunderstanding. Isn't this the funniest thing I've ever encountered? Tears fell down one after another. I didn't know when I looked up and laughed. Until I couldn't breathe with laughter. End of chapter 23.